Welcome to a football show here, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages on the 440 Sports Network. That is Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I am Braden Gall, at Braden Gall on the Twitter machine. Paul, 1-4, not good for the Tennessee Titans. How are you, sir?
I am doing all right. Another ugly football game to behold. Standard fare in this line of work at this time.
I have a collared shirt on, though. And
Good
no
job
hat.
by you. Good job by you.
How do you feel about that?
I feel excellent about it.
We've got a lot of stuff to discuss today. I don't think we're there yet on verdict time, but I've got a list of people, a list of things about this Titans team that I think we should maybe put some lines in the sand and say, all right, how close are we to getting to a verdict, and what do we need to see to have information about some of these things and some of these players and some of these coaches and some of these items. And of course, I think there's a conversation finally for me. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm starting to have some conversations in my head about Brian Callahan, the coaching staff, and sort of the reflection on him and where he should be at this stage, et cetera, et cetera. The star power, and this was sort of the headline of your episode, you can get to Paul every single game, most every game, following each game, especially the ones on Sundays, the Paul Kuharsky podcast on his YouTube page and on his website. Basically, the headline is the big name free agents didn't deliver. They spent a bunch of money on a bunch of stars, and the stars were not only not a part of the solution on Sunday against the Colts, but a big part of the problem on Sunday against the Colts. So we'll see, what did Brian Callahan today have to say the day after about Calvin Ridley, his usage, about Will Levis, his usage, et cetera, et cetera. I've got a couple lazy narratives also that I keep finding and hearing everywhere in the world, and I just want to ask you if I'm the crazy one about some of that stuff as well. So we're going to do all that today on the show. Make sure you check out paulkuharsky.com. Long form story about Chad Brinker in the analytics department for the Tennessee Titans. Make sure you go check that stuff out. Those are the kinds of pieces that take a lot of time and effort, and it's worth a couple bucks. So go to paulkuharsky.com and subscribe. Sound good?
Yes, please.
There you go. Sinkers Beverages, of course, if the Tennessee Titans drive you to drink, they are the people that you need to know. Head up there to Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. Almost 40 years of serving the community. Best of Nashville Scene, I believe, is voted on to this week, or it's going to be released this week. They are the 3-time liquor store of the year. So make sure you check out Best of Nashville Liquor Store of the Year, Sinkers Beverages. Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages. They drive so you can drink. Have that booze delivered directly to your house. And if you needed something on Sunday afternoon, I imagine you did, Sinkers Beverages are the good folks. And I announced this on Thursday's show with Nick Suss. You can catch me and Nick every single Thursday morning at 9 a.m. live right here on the 440 Sports Network. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course, now a big sponsor on the platform. Also 3-time best of, according to the Nashville Scene, barbecue joint. It is the best Texas barbecue you're going to get in Nashville. It's a little small shop up there on Briley Parkway and near Madison. Right there, it's like 10 minutes from Nissan Stadium, 10 minutes from downtown. Proud sponsor of the Gold Standard podcast, as well as a football show. So make sure you go check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Excellent place to go. He wants it to be known, Paul, that he is the official barbecue of the Houston Oilers.
I've heard that. It's an interesting approach. I'm going to the Best of Nashville party Wednesday night for the first time. So I'm looking forward to meeting a bunch of people there. I hear it's an excellent shindig.
It is. Does that mean I get to introduce you and my wife for the first time? That's going to be
interesting. I've met your wife at Nissan Stadium, or I recall at Nissan Stadium hallway for a soccer match. Soccer game.
Soccer match, yeah. That's right. That's right. It was the USA. Briefly. I think it was the USA-Mexico match, actually. And I think
and then we got another one of those coming up tomorrow night.
That's right. Now, those have been great lately. I don't know what you think about the new coach, but that's neither here nor there. We'll save that for another show altogether. All right. So my first sort of thought on this, and you can push back if you want, and if you want to jump into the comment section, if you want to jump into the comment section, please come on. Cody says, looking good, guys. I get it. Predemption says, listening from Vancouver, love finding the network. Thank you for your support. We do appreciate you guys. And of course, Donnie's in the comments as well, so jump on in there if you have questions. So I couldn't shake a feeling coming out of the game, which is that when you have extra time to prepare against a division rival who's playing their backup quarterback, their backup running back, without their top defensive lineman, maybe their top corner, that your offense didn't make it, showed almost absolutely no signs of progress outside of the running game and the offensive line maybe being better. But again, I found myself considering the source on this, which is the Colts defense being so bad that ultimately my concern about how well the offense did is more about the Colts defense than rather the offense. And they found absolutely no balance whatsoever on offense. Will Levis could not find the pieces he needed. The offense felt scared to call plays that they needed. We'll get to all of the details on this, but I kind of came away thinking like this could be considered one of the worst losses of the season. It doesn't have the same flagrant mistakes that the Bears loss had, or, the Jets loss, but for the stars not to be stars, to do it against a division rival after having a little extra time to prepare, knowing that you had to make adjustments, it didn't feel like we saw any of that. And I came away thinking like, is this the worst loss we've seen so far? And I just want to know where you stand on that.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the worst loss that we've seen. I mean, Chicago, a game that they absolutely should have won. This is a game that was reasonably in question because of things the Colts did. I think outside of errors that the Titans made, Green Bay played very well against the Titans. The Jets had a game-winning drive. This was more watchable, more endurable, less mistake filled. They didn't play well, but there weren't outrageous gaffes to regret. Can't say take out this one moment and they win and all of that. Yeah. So I get what you're getting at. My one thing, that as I've been pondering it after the fact, we said if the pass protection improved, that was the root cause of so many things. Will Levis didn't get sacked and the pass protection seemed pretty good, and things were not magically fixed by fixing the root cause. But I was fishing around on next gen stats today, and Will Levis got rid of the ball the fastest of any quarterback. One more game to be played in week 6 tonight. 2.23 seconds on average against the Colts. So there's an explanation, at least in part, for the pass protection. Brian Callahan, very lukewarm. I think lukewarm is an overstatement about Leroy Watson at right tackle. Said wasn't great. Hasn't locked down the position by any means. Still, something that we're sorting out. So, I think they fixed the root cause by throwing it quickly, by going against a team that didn't have a good defensive front. Quiddy Pay strikes fear in no one. I don't think their two best defensive front guys are on IR, not playing in that game. But still, pass rush wasn't a huge threat. He probably could have held it longer in certain circumstances. And, it all boils down to how conservative this offense was in this game. And again, I think everybody wants to say, well, look at the points and say that the defense played well enough to win. And you can make that argument. But I'd go again to Ernest Jones, who said it was a prime example of the Titans playing good defense overall, but not playing good enough defense at the times that counted. And the Titans get to 17, and the offense pretty much has a mechanism that shuts it down, barring that 31-point exception in Miami. And when they shut it down, the defense, it's incumbent on the defense to stop drives. And they gave up 2 big drives with 3 big penalties. Only one of those was questionable, the Kenneth Murray pass interference.
So, and maybe I don't disagree with you that other games have been worse or tougher watches or bigger mistakes. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Maybe I need to change the phrasing of this then, because I agree with everything you just said and how you laid out what took place. In theory, should have been all positive things for this organization in this game. And so partly why I come away with this, and maybe the right phrasing is, this loss was more concerning to me than the other ones because there wasn't an obvious explanation. There's an obvious explanation why they lost the Bears game.
That makes sense.
You give up a dumbass block punt that leads directly to points, and you throw the ball, you do a bouquet toss to the sideline, and it's easy to explain and understand why they lost the game. It's easy to see it why they lost the game, maybe even against the Jets to some degree. This one to me makes less sense, and maybe that's what I'm getting at, because you're right. They did protect the quarterback. They did have time to throw. They did have a healthy DeAndre Hopkins. This is not the first game. It's not against an elite defense. It's against statistically the worst defense in the NFL. And I know the team ran the ball well, over 140 yards. That's still almost 20 yards below the Colts' average per game allowed. So when I start putting all the things together,
and they're going against a backup quarterback who's a statue and should be sackable
without their best offensive player in Jonathan Taylor, like there's so you keep, to me, the context of this game makes me feel worse about how I'm viewing the job Callahan's doing, the job the coordinators are doing, the job the stars are doing, the job, like Simmons is back healthy. Yes, we could talk about how young the offensive line is, but they were one of the brighter spots. Yes, Jamal Adams was put on IR and they lost Condre Diggs, and we could talk about some of the injuries. Like, I understand there is some context here, but that's sort of where I'm at. Like, Tajay Spears gets a hamstring injury. Like, things seem to be going their way in the game. They seem to be set up for success in this game, and still could not get more than 17 points. Could not find a way to get a stop in the fourth quarter. Could not find a way to pick up first downs when you have to. They couldn't, even with all the things that sort of went their way. This was still how it ended up, which is exactly the same place we were in week 1 and week 2.
And exactly the same place, excuse me, they were with completely ineffective offenses under Mike Vrabel, under Tim Kelly, under Todd Downing. That I think to fans is the most frustrating thing, is that in 5 games under Brian Callahan, offensive coach who's supposed to bring a newfangled offense. Oh yeah, all right. It's not a completely revamped offense. Okay, it's maybe he doesn't have the quarterback to do it or all of that, but there's nothing that says, oh, okay, I see the glimmer of what it's going to be after things fall better into place. I mean, right now their recipe is to play super conservative. Will Levis completed 3 balls over 10 yards and 1 ball over 20 yards. This was a super conservative, run the ball, count on the defense. And whether they do it on purpose or not, like they get up 17-10, and they feel like they act, and this organization has a habit of doing this historically, at least recently. They get up 17-10 and they feel like 17-10 is 31-10,
well,
35-10.
To be fair, it is an offensive explosion for the Titans. So,
yeah.
But again, I want to clear my throat here on this and make sure we're very, honest on the front end. I think it is stupid to make grand sweeping gestures after 5 games. I think it is dumb to have some sort of final say on what you think a coach can or can't be in the NFL after 5 games of coaching. I think that's ridiculous. The quarterback, maybe we can have a little bit more thoughts and conversation because there's more body of work. He's played more than one just 5-game stretch. There's other things that maybe, again, still even early for that potentially. No good signs on that front. But the things that I sort of like explained away as first-year guy in the first few games, like special teams mistakes and not fixing this, and a lot of it's on Levis with the silly mistakes. There's a lot going on in this. This one starts to feel more on the coach to me. Because when you have 113 yards of penalties and you have extra time to sort of scheme your stars open, and you decide that, again, I acknowledge that it might be out of lack of trust of the quarterback, but the offensive line plays better, the running game plays its best, and you still can't figure out a way outside of the Nick Westbrook-Akine play, which was a brilliant call by the coach, perfectly designed scheme, perfectly executed, right time, right players, right everything. Outside of that one play, and then the Pollard block where they blocked the Pollard play brilliantly, which, let's be honest, you can't
draw.
You can't give Brian Callahan the credit for a 3rd and 19 touchdown run. Like, that's just ridiculous. Look, he gets credit, but whatever. This is the first one where I felt like this is more on the coaching staff. Is that fair in your opinion?
I think to a degree, yeah. Some players are at the forefront of this. Like, I think last week we spent a lot of time, maybe not on Monday, but later in the week, I was like, listen, you got to get the ball to Calvin Ridley. And look, only 2 times in the first half. Yeah, that's deficient, but they ultimately tried 8 times. He didn't catch 1 ball. Now, some of the throws were bad. Some of the play calls weren't great. But for the guy that you're paying $50 million guaranteed to, who's supposed to be your new dynamic weapon and the key to your explosive offense, to not catch 1 ball in 8 chances is horrifically bad. And I asked Callahan about this today. New receivers are dropped into offenses all the time. High-priced guys who are free agents and rookies galore, and make impacts right away. You guys told us during preseason, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. They're going to be in sync. And here we are 5 weeks in, and he's caught 9 balls in 27 chances. That percentage is absolutely ridiculous, unacceptable. And they're still talking about, they'll get it. They'll figure it out. I mean, that's ridiculous talk for an NFL team heading into their 6th game.
And ultimately, I have Joe. It's not fair to compare Will Levis to Joe Burrow. That's not fair to Callahan or anybody else, or to Will Levis. But a great offense and a great offensive play caller and a great offensive scheme will find a way to force the football to the guys who make plays, get the ball into their hands. They did a great job with Tony Pollard yesterday in doing that. They did.
And and Brian Callahan, by the way, used as an example of Indianapolis's success the way they found ways to get the ball into Josh Downs' hands.
I mean, and Josh Downs is the guy. I mean, look, he's a very good player. I think Titans fans undervalue him, but he's not Jamar Chase. He's not the way you force feed a guy, Justin Jefferson, when you force feed these guys that are so good that you can't help but get them the football. Like, you got to do better than 2 targets in the first half. I think ultimately that's not all on the coach and not all on the quarterback. That's got to be on Ridley as well. But I think no matter who you're blaming, it's now more of the coach, in my opinion, as well as the quarterback and on the receiver, because now it looked like they tried and couldn't get it done. And so that's on everybody. Like, if you go 9 targets, and I think you're right, the 9 receptions and 27 targets is unacceptable. That's not all on one person, but it doesn't change the fact that it's wildly unacceptable for a player of his caliber to have the football a third of the time that he's thrown to. That's everybody's fault. That's including the coach.
Yeah. And, their lack of explosives, there's a lot of reasons for it, but it just seems like Will Levis is neutered in what they're doing. And I don't know how far you want to go with this yet. But
let's get in that just a second. I want to stay on Ridley here because this is you had some comments from Brian Callahan on Monday's press conference, right? This was the first one is about just Ridley in general. We'll hear another one about the complaining that Ridley did after the game. It wasn't that maybe is unfair characteristic of what he said, but we'll get to that.
I think it's fair to call it a complaint. He was characterized as irate, which he's not.
No,
his tone of voice didn't change from his regular tone of voice. And it was characterized as now I'm going to lose the word.
You mean when he was complaining about the?
Yeah, ESPN put up, that he had a tirade. Tirade by definition is long. The clip they put up was 16 seconds, and it was a couple of interesting sentences. It was not a tirade, and he was not irate.
Is it because he had bad words that they're calling it a tirade? Like, that's stupid. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not the one to lecture folks on the language they use. Like, I'm all for. Like,
I am if you're misusing words by definition. And the tirade, the first thing it says is a long, and then it continues, and they put up 16 seconds.
No, you're correct on that one. I'm actually more offended by that usage of the word tirade than I am people saying the F word around my kids. Like, I don't care. I don't care about word. Like, to me, it's about the intent of your heart, but this is not a parenting podcast. We'll get to that in a little while. All right. Here was Brian Callahan talking about Ridley in general and the flow of the offense.
Yeah, I don't, there's multiple things that you could point to that explain one route versus another route versus there's all kinds of ways to explain it away, but I'm not really into doing that at this point. Got to find ways to make more plays, got to find ways to get the ball to him, and he's got to find ways to make the plays. I think ultimately what we've lacked so far, really in all 3 phases, is when it's been time to make a critical play or make the game-winning play. We haven't done that for whatever reason with spots. So got to keep working, got to find a way to get better. But I'm glad we have Calvin. We got to find a way to make that connection work. There's really no other way about it. And obviously the stats tell you what they tell you, but need more, need better.
Can I ask you a question about like the psychology of a press conference? I always find the psychology of a press conference to be as interesting as the information, because a lot of times these guys don't give you much. Brian does a better job of that. But are you picking up on different mannerisms from him? He's still the kind of same guy with the same answers, but there seems to be more of a I'm not sure like what the answers are kind of feel from him, and I don't know if you've picked up on that or not.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case, and he is a beaten down guy who's got, he's not saying, "Hey, I know exactly what's going on here, and we can fix it next week."
There's a lot of grasping.
There's a lot for them to sort through.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot more grasping then he's letting on. Which again, he's never going to tell us that. Like, oh, I have no idea what we're going to do. Like that's not what he's going to say. But it did feel like it's all 3 parts. It's all 3 parties, and it feels like when he's kind of shrugging his shoulders, being like, yeah, we got to figure out ways to make plays. However that happens, it's like, whoa, dude, whoa, come on, dude.
Well, he's not going to tell us how it happens, but I think he's also, at a pause point kind of in the week before they go into Tuesday's game planning session where maybe they bring something new to the table, or before he's sat down and done anything beyond reviewing the fiasco. So they're still kind of within the 24 hours that's connected to the Colts and not really into the how do we move on from this phase.
All right. Well, here's Brian talking about Ridley's profanity-laced tirade in the locker room after the game. Here's Brian on the complaint.
Yeah, I'll always take that into account when guys feel that. It's certainly not for, it wasn't for lack of intent. That much I can tell you. And I told things I talked to Calvin about for all receivers. This is a common conversation. Calvin's not the first one to know that he wants to get in a rhythm, and he certainly won't be the last. And the ability to get him the ball early is something that we tried to do. I had a couple plays called for him, and he can't control where the ball goes all the time. He can't control if the ball gets batted, or those are things out of his control. And so I don't mind it. I know Calvin wants to win. That's all he really wants to do. He wants to help us win. I love his passion. I love his drive to want to help the team and do the right things, because that's what ultimately all he wants to do is win and be a factor in that process. And he is a factor. We got to find ways to get the production early, late, whenever, because he's going to be part of the reason why we win. And that's ultimately hasn't been enough at this point. But yeah, I certainly appreciate the feedback, and those are things that I talk about with those guys all the time, and try to get him the ball when we can give him the ball.
All right, Paul, I want you to sort of I want you to layer the story together here, because it's not just a 9 targets, no catches in this game, offense struggles. It's not just 27 targets, 9 catches overall. There's a lot more to this story. It's not just a ball getting batted one time. I thought Calvin Ridley after the game walked the line as closely as you can to taking some of the blame and also saying, throw me the damn ball a little bit more. I think he came up to the line. I don't think he crossed it, though.
No, I mean, I'm fine with him saying I want the ball more early, but I don't know if he said enough. I've got to do more with it when it comes my way, no matter when it comes my way. So you can't be a guy of his stature and frankly of his spot on the payroll and complain about when your targets come, unless you're, 7 for 8. If you're catching everything that comes your way, then you say, hey, I need more of that early, and that'll get us going.
What do you make of the time? Like, I don't look, do you want to get him involved in the game early? I get it. But ultimately the time of the game is isn't it sort of irrelevant? Like, maybe I'm wrong on that. Well,
they're coming to you in crunch time. They're coming to you, know, a lot of it was in the fourth quarter. Well, they don't score in the fourth quarter. And they needed to score in the fourth quarter. So it's a compliment to him that they're coming in the fourth quarter. Now, I thought they gave up on him in the fourth quarter. After the last one, or the second to last one, they started throwing to Tyler Boyd immediately, and they got some sure completions. If you want the opposite of Calvin Ridley's reliability right now, it's Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd will catch the ball. Now he's not going to do anything with it after he catches it. But right, if you're saying, oh my God, we can't complete anything to Calvin Ridley now, what do? You say, oh, we'll throw it to Tyler Boyd. He'll catch it. And there was a little bit of that, right, in the fourth quarter. Titans have scored 12 points in the fourth quarter this year, all of it in one game. There were 5 teams yesterday that scored more than 12 points in the fourth quarter in their one game. I mean, it's just put in the category of ridiculous statistics.
I want to sort of ask, maybe it's a different question, because you wrote about Calvin Ridley in the summertime, and you sort of alluded to in your show yesterday about sort of like conversations you had around the league about Calvin Ridley. And because then we had like the comments in the summer in training camp where he talked about the guaranteed money. Then we had last week's comments about the money, and now we have this little thing here that's again in and of itself. Each one of these little things is not a big deal, but when you start to layer them all together, it does paint a picture, and we can overreact to that picture or not. But do you think this continues to get worse as it grows? And is that the information? Is that the maybe that's not the right word? Is that the sense that you have gained and learned about this particular player?
I don't know, but I think there's some cause for concern. There was another thing Thursday that none of us really talked about or went with. There was already a conversation going on in his media session where he was asked about the lack of targets. And then he was kind of like, I came in and he was kind of saying, let's be quiet about that. Let's not tip people off. And I was like, come on, everybody knows that you're going to be a highly targeted guy. You're making a lot of money and you were a big acquisition. And he was like, let's not talk. Like, why are you talking about the money? And I said, the way I was intending to say it wasn't like you're making a lot of money and you're not living up to it. The way I was intending to say it was they're paying you a lot of money and they're not, calling plays accordingly. Like they're not using their big investment. Right. He got really upset with me, asked me to remind him my name and told me multiple times, don't talk about the money. Don't talk about the money. Don't talk about the money. So money apparently is a very touchy subject for Calvin Ridley. I don't care if it's a touchy subject or not a touchy subject. It's a fact that he's third or fourth, I think third on their salary cap list this year. And if the 5 top salary cap guys on your team are not making plays for you, that's a problem. Yeah. He and Snead are 3 and 4. They had bad games. And Ridley, if he's catching a third of the balls thrown to him as the third most expensive guy in their roster, that's a big problem. Now, when I was told to worry about him with money, it didn't relate to any of this. It related to this money makes you more of what you are, scouting bromide.
Yeah.
And that Calvin Ridley, his lifestyle or whatever with money was taking a risk for an NFL team. And is that something that's going on right now? I don't know, but nothing says Calvin Ridley with money is going to explode in his first 5 games of his first season with that team that gave him that money, because that's not what we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's like it makes you more of who you are. I think adversity is the same thing. Adversity sort of makes you, it sort of paints a clearer picture of who you are. Money's kind of the same thing. And obviously, I don't think there's anything that I've seen so far that doesn't make sense, right? Like Ridley being frustrated on being targets makes sense. Ridley needing to be a function and a focus of the offense and not getting it, that makes sense to be frustrated with that. When I listened to the actual audio, which you played, I think on your show, when you listen to the actual audio of what Calvin Ridley had to say, he was very calm. He was sort of just like, no, man, like, and he admitted that he needed to be better. He didn't play well. Like, I did
say I sucked in the middle of that.
I think it's worth monitoring. I don't think it's worth like sort of making a mental note of and saying, all right, let's keep an eye on this. But I don't think so far any of it's his fault. Like the offense is not terrible because of him. Could he have made a couple of catches? Maybe, but I don't think they lost the game because of Calvin Ridley.
No, but he didn't help him win it. Like I said, and Snead also, and that's not what you're looking for from your big investments. The thing I wrote down out of that Callahan quote, which I will pursue further, and he said this multiple times, it wasn't for lack of intent. It wasn't for lack of intent. And then we talked about the Colts' intent with Downs. So why is the Titans' intent not coming to any fruition, where the Colts, with a lesser player in Josh Downs, who can do fewer things, are able to execute on their intent, and Josh Downs was a big factor in beating the Titans. Why is the Titan? This is a Callahan question, a Callahan issue. And look, I'm not saying Levis to Ridley is anything like Burrow to Chase, but he's coming from a place where if the Bengals wanted to get the ball to Chase, they could. The Bengals needed 15 or 12 yards to get a field goal at Nissan Stadium to win the game after Ryan Tannehill threw his third and the terrible interception when the Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs. And did they have a problem getting Burrow to Chase for those 12 yards? No, it was their intention, and it is also what they did, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And I think you're right.
Intent is an interesting word.
And I think he kind of, I don't want to say he like blamed a defensive player tipping the ball, but he's like, no, we had a plan to get him the football early in the game. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. So All right, I want to talk about Callahan and Levis here as a package deal, and I think that there's plenty of intent in this. There's plenty of conservative, sort of scared, whether it's scared play calling, scared quarterbacking. I don't know. We'll sort of get to that. Do you want to play the Callahan clip on this first? In terms of the verdict on Will Levis?
Let me set it up.
Yeah, why don't you set it up?
I watched this game, and then I write about it, then I ponder it, and then I look at some of the numbers and everything this morning, and I read Blake Bedingfield on it, and I talked to Blake Bedingfield, the former Titan scout who writes at Kuharsky.com some. And out of that, I conclude that while the Titans have said they're giving Will Levis this year to get all the data they can to try to get him through the bumpy stages of young quarterback play and all of that, that what they told us yesterday with what they asked him to do and what he did in the framework of what they asked him to do says that they've got a verdict because it was so conservative. He completed 3 passes over 10 yards and 1 additional pass over 20 yards. They ran they're based on running the ball, which is fine. He's releasing the ball in no time. I said the quickest release time in the league. There's so little substance to the Titans passing game, 97 yards. The next lowest was in the league was like 135 for Justin Fields in a win for the Steelers.
The guy who gets traded because he can't complete passes.
Yes. So I think the way they use him and approached him tells me they've lost faith in him, and that at least temporarily, but probably in the big picture, they've got their verdict on Will Levis. They don't trust him, and they think that this is what they can do. They're not shaping things to his strength, which are some deep balls that we talked last week about, these wow throws that we haven't seen any of compared to last year, and everything's discombobulated and whatnot. So I approached Brian Callahan with this question. The way you did everything suggests you've got your verdict.
No, I don't think that's the case. No. I think there's a lot of things that he can do better. Then there's things that I can do to help him better. And then there's around him can play better too. I think that we're really close. There's a lot of things that we do well, and there's a lot of things that we just haven't quite gotten over the hump on when it comes to, losing 1-score games. Lost 3 of them now, where we're in position to have a chance to win, and we haven't done it. And I don't know that that's necessarily it's not all a Will thing either. There's things that I can do better to help them, and just haven't been there yet. And again, we're tight, we're close, and we got to play better. There's no doubt, and he's got to play better. But there's things that I think are encouraging and positive about it as well.
If the theme of the season though is to see Will do everything Will can do to get an ultimate verdict on Will, wouldn't that idea fall in line with letting him cut it loose more rather than playing it safe?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely calls that go down the field that don't get thrown down the field. So yeah, I don't. There was conservative nature in some of the runs because we were on the ball well. But yeah, I mean, we can just drop back and throw it down the field more. Sure, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Is 95 passing yards close? Is being shut out 4 out of 5 fourth quarters close?
Close to what is what I wrote down. You said it twice. So let me ask you this. Get back to the psychology of this whole thing. The way he stumbled isn't the right word, but paused and sort of was negotiating in his own head. The answer to your second question sort of tells me what I need to know about this, because he's like, yeah. And then he paused and he's like, but I don't know. And then he paused. Like, that was not a typical Callahan answer.
All right. So what's he negotiating through there in your mind?
The only, again, we're reading way too much into a pause on a coach here. So.
No, but that's telling, because he usually is pretty.
I agree. To me, it is, I cannot say the thing out loud. I cannot say I am scared to allow my quarterback to throw the football down the field. I cannot say he's limited in X, Y, and Z, because then, for a number of reasons, I cannot say the thing I sort of like, if he's sitting in the coaching room with his dad and with his buddy and with Nick Holes, and they're sitting around and one of them says the same thing that you do, I guarantee you has something to say. He doesn't need to normally take time with his words. He's normally pretty good. And that felt like he needed to think it through before saying it, or he has no answer, or he doesn't like the answer. None of that bodes well for trust in Levis to go down the field and to grow into the things that he says they are close to doing. That little 5 seconds there, that to me was more telling than almost anything he said. Maybe I'm
no,
crazy here.
You've done a good job there articulating it. And I'm going to go back in the story actually after we're finished here and add something about that pause, because I did find it telling, but I couldn't really figure it out. So us hashing it out here is healthy and good. And it was meaningful. It's just that I don't know what's there for him to say, even with truth serum.
But it goes
because it's complicated.
But it goes to your point about the question in our conversation around Levis and the verdict here, which is, if you are still trying to figure out what he is and how he works and what he's best at, then why wouldn't you allow him to do the thing he's best at? It's no longer here's the interesting part of this, the irony of it all. There was no Superman Levis. There was no Superman Levis at all. There was just Clark Kent. It was just Clark Kent playing quarterback. And ironically, is you kind of need to know, can you deal with both halves of him? Can you have a little bit of Superman every now and then? Because that's what will make the big plays, challenge the defense, force the coordinators to think through stuff, play a too high safety look against Ridley and Hopkins, whatever it might be. And if you're not going to let him do that stuff, I think it's fair to say, what's the point?
And he could call me a hypocrite, Callahan, because I wrote after the second week, the Jets, that he had Superman complex,
right,
and they needed to get it out of him. Really, I think now in hindsight, I'd say he has stupid Superman complex, right? He was doing stupid things to try to be a hero. But I don't think throwing deep to a single covered receiver is stupid Superman complex when you have a great arm and a great release. And I wrote last week about the wild throws. I mean, if you think back to some of those throws he made last year, I think that's the whole reason to be encouraged about Will Levis. And they've taken it out of him. However that's happened. Maybe he's taken it out of himself to some degree, but it's gone. And without that, this is what's left. And what's left, very bad quarterbacking. Yeah, and with what's left is a very bad passing offense. And what the one thing that everybody thought was coming with Brian Callahan was, some form of a better passing offense than we saw from Mike Vrabel, Tim Kelly, and Todd Downing. And it's not here. And I'm sure that Vrabel is pouring himself a drink a couple times a week, or at least when he catches wind of what the Titans have done, and thinking, serves you right.
Well, that's human. There's human nature there for sure. That's just partly going, not to go back to like why this game felt like it meant more to me, is because of this situation. If you are going against the Colts without their top defensive lineman, top corner, you're at home, you got all your weapons healthy, you've got the coach that's supposed to be the genius scheme guy, the offensive line plays its best game of the year, you run the ball better than before, and you had time to throw, and this is what you can do with all of that? Like, that is the concern for me. And
that's where I thought you were going. This is what you can do with all of that. Imagine what's coming in Buffalo and in Detroit against teams that are superior to anybody the Titans have faced, except maybe Green Bay. And Green Bay was hamstrung with a second string quarterback who played exceptionally well. But the Titans are about to face real quarterbacks after facing some three backups and a shit list.
Dude, Dak Prescott, I'm not saying Dak Prescott is like the elite of the elite quarterbacks, but that dude was made to look like a toddler yesterday by the Lions defense. So that game was at home. So I look, the Bills defense can be got. You can get the Bills defense a little bit more than maybe we expected this year. But I agree with the Josh Allen and Jared Goff side.
Yeah, I mean, the Titans defense is going to have a hard time doing what it's been doing against those quarterbacks. You have to give them some grace and allow for the fact that they're maybe not going to stay at 17 or 20, that they might give up 26,
So maybe let me ask you this. So by the way, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Make sure you check out those two great locally owned businesses. I guess is the hope that, because, and there is a lazy narrative problem that I have with tying everything that this team is doing to the future of the stadium in 2027. it's not any one person's fault. It sort of sits there in front of our eyes at all times. You drive by it every single day. The stadium is there. It's a part of our our conversation as a community, and so it's there. But like, what I don't understand is sort of like tying it to the success of the football team today. Like it's somehow more important that the team needs to be good today because of the stadium. If the team is going to allow Will Levis to throw the football more, it's because they're putting a trash product on the field and they need to be more entertaining and they need to learn more about their team, not because of selling PSLs in 2027. Like, Amy certainly has to think about that, but I don't think it is related to anything at all. And I find a lot of folks just talk about it, fans, media, etc. And I think I don't understand why we go back to it a lot. I know why it's a thing in our brains, but to me, it doesn't tie into, like, honestly, I think it's the other way. They have now shown, if anything, Brian Callahan should have learned by now with he said, we're close losses. Yes, those games will generally end up at 50-50 over time. One-score games, you cannot survive year over year, winning all your one-score games or losing all your one-score games. They eventually all kind of work their way back to the middle. But if you've already seen what the team does with the conservative game plan, losing to a bad Colts team at home and scoring 17 points, why not do the other thing? Like, I don't understand why that part of it is not. I don't know. It just,
the 2027 part. I mean, I think it's just because it's a big benchmark. But to say like they got to line up for 2027. Well, why can't they line up for 2025 or 2026? I mean, 2027 is a long way off to plan. I mean, teams do plan far out, cap wise, and who's under contract for when and what year are you going to need to restock this position and all of that. But beyond the regular planning for that, I don't think the football side is doing any planning that's specific to the grand opening of a new building. They need to get better faster and stay good for people to keep jobs. If Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan want to be employed and walk into the building in 2027, they got to make a better team in 2024, 2025, and 2026. So they're not thinking about that stuff. No. And if better PSL sales result from them getting better sooner, that's a side effect to them, not a motivation.
And like, there's a good chance that like 2/3 of the team, half the coaching staff, and some of the front office is not around in 2 years, much less 3 or 4. And that could be because the team is great or because the team is bad. I just, tying it to this timeline as the football team seems silly. I understand as a community, we're all focused on it, but I feel like tying it to the football team, like, we could be getting to a point where they figure out what Will Levis is sooner than we expected. And certainly that's not looking like it's the positive side of things. Here's the other thing that I floated this to you when we talked this morning. I cannot shake that Will Levis is going to be a very good quarterback for another team. I can't shake that. I see the skills. I see the talent. I see the want to. I see how popular he is with the players in the locker room. I don't know if it's a Callahan thing. I don't know if it's a Titans thing. I don't know if it's just the time and his inexperience. But I cannot shake the fact that Will Levis is going to be a decent to average to decent quarterback, but it's going to happen on another team.
I don't know what skills and talent you're seeing right now. You're doing a good job mining for that.
It's pure ability.
But look, there is a new tier of quarterback and a new pool of quarterback. I mean, it used to be, you had a good, solid veteran, or you had a bridge guy who was a seat holder, or you had a young guy who was a draft pick. And now there's this pool, and even Andy Dalton's in it. It's headlined right now by Sam Darnold and by Baker Mayfield, of guys.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. It's headline. The guys who came into bad situations with bad ownership, bad management, bad coaches, didn't get a chance to flourish, played out their bad scenario, went somewhere else, sat for a little while, and then a coach who really thought, you know what, I think that guy's got things that I can make work. You brought them on and is getting a lot out of them. Mm-hmm. I wrote that after 2 or 3 weeks that Levis could be a guy like that. But unfortunately, you don't have time for it. Like that guy needs to be on his second or third team. Justin Fields is a quick example of that. Now, there have been some that didn't pan out. Trubisky didn't pan out. Everybody thought he was going to be a guy like that. I'll give you a couple more examples. I think people think Trey Lance could be a guy like that who came out with not enough experience, bombed as a 49er, is sitting in Dallas now. So maybe he emerges. And how about Zach Wilson, who, see, you cringe, but you cringed about Baker Mayfield, I'm sure, and you cringed about Sam Darnold, right? We all thought those guys stunk and had no chance to be good pros. And so I'd say the same thing about Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson stunk, but he's with the Jets. Everybody stinks with the Jets. He showed some promise. He's one of those guys that beat the Titans when the Titans get beat by bad quarterbacks. He showed some good things in that game. He was rolling all over the place, making good throws. So he's got a little bit on his resume. He won some games in bad situations. Now he's sitting, I can't even think of where, Denver?
Yeah, he's behind Bo Nix. What? So look, let me
I'm not saying both of those guys are going to merge, and
right.
maybe neither of them do, but on the next watch list, Trey Lance and Zach Wilson are in the pool of guys that maybe a coach sees and says, you know what, over here under my coaching, I can make them something.
I think so. I cringed at Wilson and probably Darnold and probably Lance. I think Baker's a little different because he had success in Cleveland, which is hard to do. And so I think there was some success early. I think he just got hurt a lot. And so I think Baker's maybe a little bit different. Also, a number 1 overall pick type of guy is generally a little bit better than a guy taken in the second round, like Will Levis. So I think there's a little different, but I cannot shake. I think this is going to be a guy who the verdict is going to come in at the end. Like nothing so far has said he could turn it around and have two. Now that there's like less pressure on him almost, he finally figures out how to loosen up. Maybe Callahan realizes I got to start calling this a little bit looser. I got to start being a little bit more aggressive on this. Let's play to his strengths. And that could be a reason that things start to come into form. I do think that Levis has to work on, I'm going to call it the Nick Saban effect, which is you've got to be right here at all times. Like you just got to be sort of like level. Now, some guys.
He's better than he used to be, but he's not where he needs to be.
Some guys, and I'll use college quarterbacks in the state. Diego Pavia is a guy that's just Johnny Manziel up and down, emotion all the time, and it's working for a place like Vanderbilt. Nico Iamaleava is totally flatlined, almost to the point that it hurts him in the fourth quarter from a play, like from a development standpoint. He doesn't take any, he's not a dog, right? Baker's got a lot of dog in him. Levis has a lot of dog in him, but it's too much sometimes for a guy who's not established yet. And I think once you get established, you can then exude all of that and ride the waves because you know how to manage it. And I don't think he knows how to manage it yet because he looks mentally like, who's your second base? Look, we got Mets and Yankees people in the comments here. I didn't even know the Mets game was on yet. So I'm a little frustrated that all you guys told me what happened.
Big fan. He doesn't know when the games are.
No, I've got it recorded. I thought it was starting after the show. I thought it started. Listen, I watched every inning.
6:38 tonight. That's when my game is.
I watched every inning last night. I don't want to hear it. The point was it Chuck Knobloch at second base who couldn't throw it to first base? Is that who it was? Rick Ankiel for the Cardinals? Like, it feels a little bit like that, where and I don't know if it means that, to your point, you're comparing the Jets organization to the Titans situation here, right? Like, poor situation, bad this, bad that, needs to go somewhere else. I'm not ready to say that yet, but it does feel like that the change of scenery thing is the only thing that might change his confidence if they continue on this path for another 5, 6, 7 games.
In a similar ilk, this Jason McDonald comment here, I don't have authority to put it up, but put that up. He's saying, and I've heard this from a lot of people, at this point, he's curious to see more of Rudolph purely as a quality check for Callahan. He's not saying Rudolph is an answer at quarterback, but what does a semi-functional Callahan offense even look like? And we were talking about this in the press room today. Yeah. There is some curiosity. You want to see some proof of concept now with Callahan. Like, does this offense work?
Period.
Yeah, right. And you can semi-prove it with a functional limited quarterback who you're not waiting for the upside to come out in Mason Rudolph. That would be could be healthy for everybody. I'm not campaigning for it. I understand what they're doing and all of that. I do think there's more of a ticking clock on it now, and it's too bad they don't have a better alternative. If they had Joe Flacco, I would be saying go. Especially when he made the speech he did today, not the speech, but he had the answer he did today, Callahan, in terms of our job and what we're looking to do every day is win. And Nick Suss asked a very direct question about the developmental approach that you've said that you're taking with Levis versus winning. And he said winning.
I think the argument for changing,
is what you have to say.
Yeah, I think if you are arguing to change the quarterback, I think arguing to win 6 or 7 games versus 3 is a bad one. I think if the argument is to figure out what you've got in Callahan, I think that's far more approachable and far more palatable for me as a guy who just wants more data. I just want to see more stuff and understand more stuff.
Well, the people who want to know what they have in Callahan are the media and the fans. Ideally, the owner would know what she's got in Callahan. Ideally, the GM and the football president would know what they have in Callahan. If they need to know what they have in Callahan,
well, but how can you? Okay,
we got problems, right?
In theory, I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah,
but at the same time, just to back up for a second on this, general managers, head coaches, first-round draft picks, they're all made incorrectly, poorly, with the assumption that they're all going to work out. And they're made poorly all the time. General managers get paid millions of dollars to select players in the first round who are busts all the time.
Absolutely.
Most coaches get hired and don't work out. And I guarantee you not one of those owners or general managers are like, I'm not really sure what we've got here. So I don't know if that's like truly fair, because I think ultimately some of sports in general is not knowing what's going to happen. That's the fun of it.
Absolutely. But some of sports in general, if you as an owner know what you're doing, is that people have to be given some kind of leash and time.
I agree with that.
Right.
Okay.
This year could be an absolute disaster. They could win 1 or 2 more games and finish with 2 or 3 wins, which to me, I think is the worst case scenario. Yeah. And she can't think about it, can she?
I don't know.
A year after firing a guy who people regard as a very good head coach. No. She's going to fire the guy she hired to replace him?
It's fascinating to allow yourself to think what Mike Vrabel could do with this roster, and then to turn around and immediately say, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to see what Brian Callahan could do with a real quarterback?"
I know
it's a very weird.
Let's get into that for a second, because I may write more about this. You've hit on a core issue, this idea of judgment, right? In judging the quarterback, in judging the coach, in judging the GM, there's always some kind of hole, right? And you can always say, well, we can't really judge Levis last year until he's got some protection and some weapons. Now, they worked to get him some protection and some weapons. The protection isn't quite working out. Calvin Ridley is, a top 20 receiver anyway. And Calvin Ridley was 0 for 8 or 9 yesterday. Now, are we allowed to judge Levis surrounded by this better cast of characters and with a better offensive coach? I think, I'd give him a little bit more time. But how long do we wait until it's not like it's been that long, but we can consistently punch holes in the factors around him to delay a judgment of him. It seems to me at a certain point you judge him because it's time to judge him based on what he's done. Same for Callahan, who gets a lot more time. Same for Carthon. Look, he's got 3 picks that look very good in Latham and Sweat and Brownlee. He's got a free agent class that's not living up to its money at all. Lloyd Cushenberry looks like an average center. Snead and Ridley have not lived up to their billings. Pollard looks like the best guy of the bunch, who is not any one of us would have spun the wheel and predicted Pollard. The free agent class is not living up. Free agent class is doing what the top free agent class from March generally does every year, not live up to its billing, right? A Brinker.
There's a reason they're free agents.
We don't even really know what Brinker does. I'm trying to bring that more to light, but those conversations are behind the scenes. It's connected to my analytics conversation, but the story I was allowed to do is the analytics story.
Yeah.
But, we have to judge these people inside the context that we get. We can't wait for everything to be perfect around.
So I think by the end of the year, and this is ultimately where I've always stood on this, if he's terrible and you lose a bunch of games, well, you learn it by the end of the season. And ultimately, you have to have your judgment. When do you sit in judgment of Will Levis? Ultimately, it has to be before you make a pick in the draft. Like that's what it needs to be. Like you can have Will Levis as the backup if you want, and you can have him be there. I don't know. You could trade him during the offseason, but you have to, like, before you make a selection or on the clock in the April 2025 draft, that's when you have to be. I think you need to know, because if you're picking top 3 or 4, you need to know if that's a direction you need to go.
And maybe Will Levis is very good fortune that this is not a good quarterback draft.
Maybe that's true. I do think I will say I do think this quarterback draft class is much better than the average person thinks it is. I think it's much better, and it has nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. So don't give me that name at all.
Do not bring that circus to town. The Titans do not need merry-go-rounds.
Quickly, Ed says, as my drink arrives, we look to have solved left tackle, defensive tackle, and cornerback in this year's draft. Things are looking up. That's a commentary about the pieces that you just mentioned, of course. And there's a bunch of, I got to scroll through all the Mets posts in here, which apparently they're playing well. Jamal Adams, of course, Trevor mentions him as a piece. He was not an intentional
he was not
piece.
going to be a big factor.
Yeah.
We didn't get a chance to talk to Callahan about him today because we had so much else. We need to find out about this non-football injury. Did he slip in his house and something happened? I thought non-football injury was off limits during football season, so we'll get more on that.
Oh, you mean like a designation illegal, like
yeah.
not allowed?
I thought you had to come into camp with a non-football injury to get non-football designation.
So if you're ordering drinks, make sure you order from Sinkers Beverages. Search Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages, and have the booze delivered directly to your house. They drive so you can drink. Of course, there you have it. Make sure you go. Great beer selection, tons of local craft beer in there. Fantastic stuff, and a great member of the community. So if you're in East Nashville or in Hendersonville, Bluegrass Beverages up there. It's a great company owned in Middle Tennessee by Middle Tennesseans who love the Titans, who love the Preds, who love Middle Tennessee sports, and they support those communities. They walk the walk on that stuff. And of course, they're buddies with Shotgun Willie's Barbecue as well, just down the street. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 10 minutes from Nissan Stadium, right up there in Madison, right there on Briley Parkway at the top of East Nashville. It's maybe 6 miles from downtown. You can get there real fast. It's been a 3-time Best of Nashville award winner, just like Sinkers Beverages as well. So you can get to all that. I will say one more quick lazy narrative thing that I hear so much of, and I know you get a lot of it, and you get a lot of questions about it. And I know it's just the simple thing to do because he's dominating for Baltimore. But this Derrick Henry conversation is so absurd to me. Like, if you're going to talk about the Titans keeping Derrick Henry, you have to do the math correct. And nobody's doing the math correct on how much it would have cost the Titans to keep Derrick Henry under contract. I just, I don't understand, with a new coach and the amount of money it would have cost. I'm just not sure. I know he was an important member. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, and you're going to love Derrick Henry the rest of your life. I get all of that. But what good does it do you to be like, God, I wish, Derrick Henry would be doing great right now for us? I'm like, no, you just said it, Paul. One of the best free agents in this class has been the running back.
And I don't know if the price is the big issue there. Derrick Henry was a free agent. I think people in Nashville somehow just don't know what the terms mean. The Titans didn't have a right of first refusal on Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was free to do what he wanted. And everybody's making it like the Titans cast him aside. The Titans, I don't think they wanted him back, but had they wanted him back, it sure seemed like he was saying goodbye while he was still under contract after that last game. And he was free to leave. So keep that in mind. Also, the Titans' run game this week, their numbers were about equal to Derrick Henry's numbers. So that's not their biggest problem by any means.
No, I understand why. Same thing with the stadium. I understand why it kind of takes over, but it is so overvalued in the grand scheme of the conversation, where Pollard has been worth the money and been a positive member of the free agent class. The running game is doing quite well. Baltimore is a far different situation and a far different offense with a far different coordinator and a far different quarterback and a far different everything. And I know why it happens, but it doesn't, to me, it serves no purpose. It's a lot of wasted time and energy. I don't know. Maybe that's just, I get frustrated by stuff that I hear and I just go, why are we talking about this? I don't, it doesn't have any relevance to it's not grounded in reality, I guess.
Well, why didn't the Jaguars just keep Calvin Ridley? Because he chose to come to the Titans.
Yeah. They don't have restricted free agents in football, Paul.
Well, they do. but they generally get signed by the team that's restricted. They have
That's
a
true.
shorter contract.
They don't trade the rights away, offer sheets to other teams like they do in the NHL or whatever.
You can sign an offer sheet, but it's very infrequent.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. All
Ryan
right,
Fowler did it once upon a time.
Okay. What else? What do you got for the folks at paulkuharsky.com this week?
Well, Mike Herndon will have a piece up tomorrow morning. It's a mystery to me, so it should be a mystery to you. We'll see. Blake Beddingfield's review is up right now. He went through every penalty from this game called against the Titans. You're not going to like what he says, but you should read it. He also scouted carefully what Jeffrey Simmons did and what Leroy Watson did. So those are all things of interest. You need to read those. More on me talking about, I think the verdict's already in on Will Levis, and much more to come this week, including the Paul Kuharsky podcast on Thursday afternoon.
There you have it. All right. So Sinkers Beverages, 3-time liquor store of the year in Nashville. Check them out. A great place. Best liquor store in the city, as voted on by you, the Nashvillians. Go check that out. Best brisket in the city, of course, is Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. He's also a proud member of the community and a huge supporter of Nashville sports. So go check them out. Obviously, I think it's the best Texas barbecue outside of Texas, as named by Texas Monthly. He's a classically trained Texas meat smoker. So go check out my guy, Pitmaster Bill, over at Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. You can get to them both on all over the socials and stuff. So we do appreciate them. PaulKuharsky.com, the Paul Kuharsky podcast as well, and all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network.
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock the locks. Real New York baseball, 6:38. I know what time, and I'll be watching it live.
New York City is a National League town. Bye, Paul.